How do you get an audience interested in what you have to say? Well, it's not about getting interest. It's about showing interest. Our audience won't be interested in what we have to say until they feel that we are interested in them. I remember a girl that I was dating broke things off with me. And I thought up until that point, things had been going well, and I was a little bit confused as to why things hadn't worked out and kept on going. So I asked for some feedback. She gave me one of the best pieces of feedback I've ever needed to hear. She said, I felt that it was just always about you. You never asked about me. And that was a huge lesson that I learned in relationships, and ultimately a lesson that transpires into speaking as well. That people aren't going to be interested in you unless they feel that you're interested in them. And as I should have done many years ago in that relationship, the key to generating that interest is to ask more questions. And what I'm going to share with you today are 3 of my favorite warm-up questions that you can use with a completely cold audience. You've never met them before, possibly will never meet them again. How do you start to generate that interest and engagement from the moment you step onto stage so that your audience becomes interested in what you have to say? The first question that I like to ask is one that I've really generated during the pandemic and lockdown. When we have lots of different people joining in on Zoom, one of my opening questions that I love to ask, what city and country are you tuning in from? If this is a physical audience, you can adapt that slightly and say, where have you traveled from today? If it's a small event, they've probably just traveled from somewhere in the city and the surrounding area. If it's a larger event, perhaps you have had national and even international travel. The reason why I love asking people where they're from is because we all have a patriot within us. We all have a bias towards where we live in the world. We think that our city and our country is naturally a little bit better than other cities and other countries. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be living there, would we? So I like to ask this not just because it shows a little bit of interest, and I like to see all of the different cultures and nationalities that we have joining in with a speech or a workshop, but also it starts to generate some of that positive feeling, generate some of that patriotic pride that people have. And it begins the session on a good footing. It starts to generate some of that positive emotion. And when people are feeling positive when you're speaking, they're more likely to feel positive about you speaking. The second type of question I like to ask is the yes-no identifier. This is where you ask your audience a question and they say yes if it applies to them and no if they don't. In a physical audience, you could get some hands going here and say, raise your hand if this applies to you. If it's in the virtual space, you just get them to put in the chat, yes, or sometimes you can get them to put no as well if that's important to hear. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. If I'm addressing an audience of aspiring speakers, one of the questions I might ask is, have you been paid to speak? Now, I don't care if this is just someone covering your travel expenses. I don't care if someone's just slipped you a £20 note or a $20 bill as a little thank you. I don't care what the fee is, but has someone given you money because they asked you to speak? And if I'm looking at the audience and I see a lot of hands being raised or a lot of yeses coming through in the comment box, I know that this is a more experienced audience and I can move my content up a little bit to meet them where they're at. Equally, if I'm getting a lot of blank stares or a lack of activity in the comment box, I know that most of the audience, they're just starting to do little freebies here and there. They're doing social media videos, they're doing charity work. So I can move my content to meet them where they are at their stage of the journey. And that's the really important part of self-no identifiers. It's to inform you about how to address them with the content. what happens with a lot of supposed yes-no identifiers is it's really just about hyping your audience up with bullshit affirmational statements. Who here wants to make money? Who here wants to be successful? Who here wants a positive mindset? Of course people are going to say yes to that. And I just find that's really manipulative, and it's trying to get people to buy into what you're saying without really offering anything of substance. So when you're asking people to raise their hands, when you're asking for these yes, no's, it's not about just trying to get them to say yes, to buy into what you're saying. It's to find out information about them, be curious about them, and then that shapes the content that you're going to deliver. Really key telltale sign, if you ask a yes-no question and you're going to deliver exactly the same content, whether the audience say yes or no, you haven't asked the question properly. You're not genuinely interested in the answer. You're just asking it, hoping people will say yes, and continuing to say what you're going to say anyway. The yes-no has got to inform how you're interacting with the audience. That's when it will feel like a genuine question. That's when the audience will feel that you're genuinely interested in them, because they will see how you're adapting your topic and your subject matter to meet them where they're at.
Our Facebook group, Rise and Inspire Speakers, provides you with a safe, supportive community to develop the skills to get your message out into the world. We host a virtual summit, Inspire Week, within the group every month, where you can sign up for a 30-minute slot to speak live in the group. This is a free opportunity you can sign up for month after month to practice your skills, try new things, and refine aspects of your story and message. There is a ton of educational content that gets pumped into this group. You can access ongoing educational resources that help you gain more confidence on camera, create more compelling speech content, and develop a deeper connection with your ideal audiences. Speaking of connection, the members of our community are fantastic. They are like-minded people who, just like you, want to make a difference in the world and will cheer you on and encourage you every step of the way. If you want to master your virtual speaking skills, then this is the place to be.
The third question I like to ask, what do you want to change or improve from today's speech, today's workshop, today's seminar, whatever it is I happen to be running? And the reason why I love this question is because people then tell you what your content should be. They say, well, I want to work on my body language a little bit more when I'm speaking. I want to find out how to get more paid speaking gigs. I want to find out how to translate what I do physically into the virtual space, how to speak on camera. Your audience start giving you all the information that you need in order to be able to help them. And this ties into what I was saying with the previous question that I use, is if you're just going to go into a session and do your content exactly as planned, you're not reacting and responding to your audience. You're not interacting with your audience effectively. Now, I'm not saying that you go in and wing it and have no idea of what you're going to say. You should be planned. You should have a clear idea of some of the things you're going to talk about. But what you then do is you take the basic skeletons of some of the key points that you're saying, and then you start to bring in more specific ideas or more specific examples that apply to where your audience are at. And how do you know where your audience are at? Because you've asked them. And your audience will see that you are responding to what they've given you. And if they feel that you've asked a question, they've given you information, and you're genuinely responding to that information, they'll see that you're interested in them. And that's why I love that question, because basically that gives you all that you need to run a successful session, to deliver a successful speech. Your audience are telling you what they want to hear, so give it to them. It really is that simple. And that's the power of warm-up questions. Just asking a few of these simple questions at the start of a speech or a workshop is going to bring the audience on side. They're going to give you the answers that they want to hear. They're going to shape and guide how they want to be spoken to. And then you just show up with all of your knowledge, all of your expertise, and you take them on that journey. And that will allow you to have far more impact and far more effect than if you just walk onto stage thinking that you know everything and start monologuing at them. The audience won't appreciate that. And most of all, you won't have the impact that you want to have on them. So start bringing these questions into the start of your speeches. Because remember, until the audience are interested in what you have to say, you might as well not be speaking. And in order to generate that interest, it's all about asking the right questions.